connection with the Anima Mundi, which also underlies the whole practice of alchemy. You know, in the absence of the Anima Mundi, there could be no astrology or alchemy or magic, right? Because they would merely become astronomy, chemistry, and technology, you know. So the Enlightenment era, you know about this, the late 17th, early 18th century or thereabouts, right? This early modern sort of Enlightenment era movement that had, you know, the Enlightenment, and it had a lot to do with scientific method. It had a lot to do with empirical sort of reductionist science. It had a lot to do with what they would say positivistic, like the sort of secularization of the world, you know, positivism and things like, and it basically exorcised, as one would a demon, exorcised the Anima Mundi out of the sciences and left them, in my opinion, anemic, right? Missing the soul of the sciences, whereas that was relegated strictly to the church, and the sciences were pushed to the side and they've become this, you know, mechanistic, sort of soulless body of weights and measures, essentially, and trivia. You know, the universe itself, the cosmos itself, becomes this dead clockwork that we're supposed to measure and observe, right? It's not this interactive, ensouled cosmos anymore. And that happened during the Enlightenment. And that's why I will say I am anti-Enlightenment all the way. You know, I am absolutely anti-Enlightenment. I'm talking about capital E Enlightenment, the movement. There was a movement called the Enlightenment, this era, right? And the project, the central part of, you can argue, the central project of the Enlightenment era was to exorcise all of these metaphysical elements out of the science. So that's why after the Enlightenment, you have astronomy, chemistry, and technology. Whereas before the Enlightenment, you had astrology, alchemy, and magic or theurgy, you know? So astrology is to astronomy as alchemy is to chemistry, as magic is to technology. You know, the only difference between the two, like let's take alchemy, for example. When the alchemist is doing an operation in his lab, those operations that are occurring in the alembic or the athanor or the retort or the crucible, etc., those operations that are occurring have a simultaneous hermetically corresponding operation in the alchemist himself, which makes it alchemy, because without that crucial interaction, it's just chemistry, you know? Let's do astrology now. So astrology and astronomy both calculate and measure and chronicle the movements of celestial bodies and celestial mechanics, etc., except astrology has the accompanying hermetic belief that those movements and placements of planets and signs and houses have an effect on the microcosmic sphere. They have an effect on the astrologer in the world. Right? They're not just dead movements in space, some clockwork mechanism, some cosmic mechanism, celestial mechanics or whatever. It's not that. We're in a relationship with that. So the Enlightenment, going back to what you wanted me to clarify, divorced astrology from astronomy. It divorced alchemy from chemistry. It divorced technology from magic, you know, and made them two separate things. One is ensouled. One has retained the Anima Mundi, or the spirit of the world, you know, that animating cosmic soul. Whereas the other one is just a mechanistic, positivistic, secularized sort of system that could be measured and quantified. So to put it one last way, they've separated the qualifiable from the quantifiable. Whereas in a Pythagorean sense, they're one thing. Numbers numbers, for example, to Pythagoras, number 1, number 2, 3, whatever, it wasn't just about counting integers. Like, he wasn't just saying Johnny has 3 apples in his basket. That's it. That's all that means. He was talking about the essence of the number 3, you know, and how that pertains to, you know, the triad, how that pertains to the first kind of section of the Tetractys, how that pertains to the simplest two-dimensional plane. Because if you take 3 lines, you get this simplest two-dimensional plane.
That's actually a really interesting perspective, and I hadn't really thought about it that way before. And I when you put it that way, I agree with you. I guess I just kind of had this idea in my head about the Enlightenment being this kind of age of maybe like you know, the freedom of religion or new ideas, and the founding ideas that enacted the experiment of the United States and things of this nature. What do you?
And you're kind of right. Yeah, I think you're kind of right, for better or worse, right?
Yeah.
For better or worse, there was the separation of church and state. That's for sure. Now, I tend to think that this separation, which we're still feeling that, right?